welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway. In this episode, I'll be recapping the ice dance event at Skate Canada 2024. This event was won by Piper Gilles and Paul Poirier of Canada. This is their fifth Skate Canada title in a row. They won their first one back in 2019, which at the time was an upset over Hubble and Donahue, and they have not lost a Skate Canada since. I will say, traditionally, across all four disciplines, Skate Canada is known to be a little bit high scoring, and so sometimes it's difficult to really compare their scores, what we saw Chalk and Bates get last week, to what we will see Guinard and Fabry get next week. So just keep that in mind. In their rhythm dance, they are skating to music from the Beach Boys, which I think is a perfect fit for them. Basically, he's a lifeguard. He's in a full white getup with a lifeguard on the front, and apparently so is she. So when they debuted this routine during practices, she was in this pink and white candy striped bathing suit with like a sarong. Very fun. She said it was very Barbie inspired, so that's kind of what I was expecting when showtime came on Saturday, but turns out that was not the outfit. Instead, she is also dressed like a lifeguard. Very like 60s style bathing suit. It's a really fun program. In their twizzles, they do have this really kind of weird transition in between the twizzles. And I wonder if it's because Piper often struggles with that second set of twizzles, if that's kind of a way to sort of choreographically allow for a little bit of pause to allow her to kind of reset before she turns in the other direction. But overall, I found this particular program to be a lot more cohesive than, of course, what we saw from Chalk and Bates last week, but also what I've seen from Guinard and Fabry's rhythm dance also. Now, in their free dance, it's a little bit more questionable for me, if for lack of a better word. I just said that their rhythm dance was basically my favorite of the top three. Their free dance for me is probably my least favorite of the other two. It's a bit of an interesting combination for me. For instance, let's start with their costume. So she's in like this almost like Cinderella style dress with like this neckline, high neckline with like the sheer off shoulder bodice. And so when I saw the costumes before I saw the program, I thought, are they doing some kind of Disney princess? Like that's what she looked like to me. So they come out to Air on a G-string, which is beautiful, subtle music. And then they switch to a song called Whiter Shade of Pale. The only way I can describe it is it sounds like typical Gilles and Poirier music. And then about halfway through, maybe closer towards the 3-minute mark, they switch to like a tango. And frankly, I think this is the best part of their program. And then they go back to a Whiter Shade of Pale and end it. And for me, it's just a bit of an odd combination. And then I was talking about her costume. We have to talk about his, which is a completely red suit with his back out. It's like a keyhole, like a big keyhole. A little bit of a peekaboo tattoo in the back, which is a choice. I don't hate it. It's interesting. I just don't know that I don't know that I think that the whole program works. They're very strong in it. For like every single year since they have come off of the Olympics, they debut at Skate Canada, they don't do a challenger, and their programs look ready to go. The problem for them a lot of times is maintaining that momentum consistently throughout the entirety of the season. Now, obviously, in that 2022-23 year, Piper was diagnosed with cancer, and so that was a huge disruption to their training where they hadn't lost anything. Last year, it seemed like it took a bit for them. Like they started off really strong at Skate Canada, lost a Grand Prix final, and then came on really strong at Worlds. So it felt like it was a bit up and down. So what I would love to see for them would be for them to sort of keep up this performance level. They get amazing, great levels at this event in all season, so that they're performing at their best at Grand Prix final and at Worlds, where they are clearly gunning for. Now, if I were to rank the top 3 right now in terms of programs, I know last season I liked Chalk and Bates' Rhythm Dance the best, and I liked Guinard and Fabry's Free Dance the best. This season, I definitely like Gilles and Poirier's Rhythm Dance right now the best. I feel like Chalk and Bates have an incomplete on theirs. And right now, I like Chalk and Bates' Free Dance the best. But why I think it's very interesting that I feel like their rhythm dance potentially might be their stronger vehicle is because traditionally that has been their weakest. Even back when we had pattern steps, it's typically not been received as well. And so they oftentimes will end up behind. And we know in ice dance, we don't a lot of times see a lot of movement between, especially amongst those top teams, between the rhythm dance and the free dance. Now, last year at Worlds, of course, Maddie and Evan won the rhythm dance and Gilles and Poirier won the free dance, but they could not overcome the deficit that they had to Maddie and Evan after the rhythm dance. So I think coming in with a strong rhythm dance could be a good strategy for them. If they could win that segment of the competition, it makes the path to a world championship a lot easier for them. Now, like I said, Maddie and Evan have an incomplete. We'll see in a couple weeks what that rhythm dance looked like. But right now, I was really impressed with that segment of the competition for them. And then the free dance to me felt a little bit more what we're kind of used to seeing from them, with the exception of a couple of moments in that tango sequence, like their character step where they're in hold the whole time. Really, really different from what we're seeing from what anybody else is doing, where everybody else is kind of flailing around and doing cartwheels and all of these other kind of different things. I think they could be something that could really help them in this program stand out. But right now, I need to see it another time before I'm excited about it. And one other thing I really liked was there's this lyrics in that song that talk about cartwheels. And they do like this choreographic assisted jump where she looks like she's doing cartwheels to that same piece of the lyrics and the music. And it's just brilliant. I love that. All right. Second place here was Marjorie Lavoie and Zach Lagat, also of Canada. So they go 1-2 here. As expected, they withdrew from their challenger earlier this season because Marjorie had a second concussion. Apparently, Zach whacked her on the elbow. One day, whacked her with his elbow one day in practice. And that's concerning to me. They said that this concussion was not as bad as the one that she had last season. But we know that getting multiple concussions can be problematic long term. I mean, last year she was literally, they had to withdraw from nationals and from 4 continents. She was having to wear like sunglasses, be in dark room for like really long periods of time. It was very, very scary. So I'm glad that this one was not as severe, but it still worries me long term once people start having multiple concussions, because it's basically kind of what happened to Caitlin and Jean-Luc. All right, so in their rhythm dance, they are skating to Austin Powers, which is interesting because it's also what Caroline Green and Michael Parsons are using in their rhythm dance as well. So I certainly hope that we get an Austin Powers showdown at some point this season. They also did an Austin Powers routine very many years ago, back when they were in Novice. There was a really cute picture that somebody had put on X this weekend with a shot of them at that point and then a shot from their rhythm dance here. And he basically was in the same kind of looking costume, what I guess you would be since you're trying to channel Austin Powers. Unfortunately for them, they had a big error in the rhythm dance. So right before their pattern step started, they were doing this Ina Bauer kind of transition, and he fell. Now, it was in between elements, so it wasn't the same as Madison Chalk's fall in the character step last week, where that affects the entire element there. It was a very hugely costly for them, probably ended up costing them somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 points. For Marge and Zach here, was not as costly, but still costly. So it's a lot of people on X, Benjamin Augusto included, who felt like it should be worth more than just a -1 when you have a fall, even if it's not on an element. And I honestly disagree with that. And this is the reason why, because they ended up getting a 77 and some change on this particular program. Had they skated cleanly without the fall, which basically would have been the same without the fall, even though the fall was very disruptive, they were able to get right back into their pattern step. And I think they still got like a level 3 on their pattern. They probably would have scored 82 points, maybe even 83. So that fall ended up actually costing them like 5 points because, yes, they got the mandatory 1 point fall deduction, which is all that they have to do. And their potential for their PCS goes down because you have to go down. I think to the highest I think that you can give is like a 9.5 in the point when they get a fall, which they were going to be getting 10s anyway. But I think they lost probably almost a point on each of those 3 PCS marks because of the fall. I think they ended up 4th in PCS in the rhythm dance. And so it was costly in terms of that. So I don't know that you've got to penalize a team more for that when they fall in between an element. But that's just my 2 cents. Like, you may feel completely different, and I think that's totally fair. And it was disruptive to the program, whereas Maddie kind of jumped right back up, and it's like they didn't really miss a beat. And here you could definitely feel it as they were kind of skating around trying to find their place. And Zach was so disappointed at the end. I mean, he looked like a 5-year-old at the end of their routine that just disappointed their parents, even in the mix zone after. He still looked pretty distraught about it. And their free dance, another very strong program for them. Like, I think every program that they have done in this Olympic cycle has been really strong. Now, of the 3 free dances that they've had so far, this one so far is my least favorite of the 3, but I've loved the previous 2 because both of them have been number 2 on my season's best list at the end of the season. So I was a huge, huge fan of their White Crow program 2 years ago, and I loved the Roses that they did last year. So this one is still very strong. Just because I think it's the 3rd best one that they've done doesn't mean I don't like it. I still do really like it. So it's To the Sound of Silence, which Zach says he did not like originally, but he likes it now. There's some highlights in this that are some things that they do that are just, to me, the best in the business. One is their 1 foot step. Like, the other team that I would put up there is Christine and Anthony. They have improved so much in their 1 foot step. But since Caitlin and John Luke have stepped away and they had the best 1 foot step in ice dance, now I look at Marjorie, Luke, and Zach, and I felt the same way after Worlds. I'm like, I think they've got the best 1 foot turn sequence right now going. Now, they didn't win that here. Gilles and Poirier got the higher, but I would take Marjorie and Zach for that element all day. The other thing I think that they do probably better than anybody else in the world is twizzles. They go so fast. To me, much better than the top 4 teams. So the top 3 plus Fear and Gibson, I think they have the best twizzles. And I know I saw Ben Augusto also comment about how much ice coverage that they get in addition to the speed on their twizzles. I really like their midline step too. It kind of reminded me of Chalk and Bates last week, where it doesn't feel like it's necessarily a step sequence that they need to check off. It looks like it's just part of the program, just part of the movement of the program. And I really love that. And it's funny because at the end, I was like, I think these 2 get along now, right? Because it's famously, especially a couple of years ago, it was people like, these 2 don't get along well off the ice. And if they still don't get along well, they cover it up very well. But they look like they get along well now. And it's nice to see. Moving on to our number 3 team here, that was Lopareva and Brousseau of France. And their rhythm dance, they are doing this quirky, like robotic kind of number. I really like the costumes. I love their full commitment to it. It was very clean. It ends with this lyric that goes, "Oh, those Russians." And I'm like, okay, why do we include that? Like, what are you trying to say by that? Because Evgenia Lopareva is Russian. I'm sure, I know it's just like part of the song, but it feels like it's there on purpose. And I want to know more about that. Their free dance is so different. And frankly, it is quite welcome because it just really stands out. This is my 2nd time seeing it. And it's one of those programs that I like even more this 2nd time. That, in fact, when I saw it at whatever challenger they were at, they all run together. I immediately watched it a second time because I was like, what did I just watch? Like, that was, it makes you stop and really appreciate, because it really embraces how quirky they are in a way that their last two free dances did not. Like, I liked their Edith Piaf program from 2 years ago. I liked their Bells of Moscow last year, but this is the vehicle that I feel like could really propel them if they continue to skate it this well. They have been working a lot with Guillaume Cizeron, and I think it's definitely helped paid off for them. I love their straight line lift where she's upside down. It just goes right up with the music. There's another really great use of the music after their twizzles. When they're done with it, it goes right to the music. I love the knee slide at the end where she kicks her leg over his head. They are definitely not killing it in the levels department. So not super impressive there, and they are beatable in terms of that. But I really enjoyed both of their programs here, but especially that free dance. Fourth place here was the Tasslers from the Czech Republic. And they're skating to Hot Stuff in their rhythm dance. Super fun. Lost some levels. They lost a point from when they finished their routine to when they got their scores. And that's just going to be an issue for them really all season. It was an issue for them last year too, because they have all the talent in the world. They're a very fast team. They have some great tricks. And they have really good synchronicity together. But what kills them from competition to competition is the levels that they get on those step sequences. And it got them here in the rhythm dance because ultimately they were fifth in the rhythm dance, but they moved up after their free dance. And their free dance are skating to music from Moby. Love that they do this straight line combo lift at the beginning, and she goes into this full split upside down on the second lift of that. Very cool. Love the sliding movement that they do. Like, they have done some really cool sliding movements over the years, but they always look like they're taking some effort to hold the position, whereas the one that they're doing this year looks seamless. It looks very effortless, which is exactly what you want all of your movements to look like, really. So good outing for them. Lucky for them that a couple of teams behind them didn't do as well and finished fourth, which is their best finish at a Grand Prix. They were previously fifth 3 other times. So moving in the right direction for these two. In fifth place was the American team of Emiliazinas and Vadim Kolesnik. And they were in very, very close to a medal position, fourth after the rhythm dance. And the question was like, can they push the Evgenia and Jeffrey ahead of them at all? But unfortunately for them, just again, almost there. And I feel like I say this with this team every single competition except for 4 continents last year. They're almost there. One mistake away, a few levels away from doing something really fantastic. And I hope eventually, one day, sooner rather than later, I stop saying almost and it's like they're there. In the rhythm dance, you can see that they skate with a lot of speed, so much so at times that it almost feels a little bit frantic to me. They got a huge score on their choreographic rhythm sequence. Judges really like them. Again, not great levels. In the free dance, this free dance is stunning. It's one of my favorite free dances all season. But lost levels. Step sequence, turn sequence, twizzles. They did beat the Tashlers on PCS, and frankly, they were not that far from Evgenia and Jeffrey on PCS either. But those little bitty things, and I know that this is the kind of program that really frustrates the casual fan because they can't see the difference between a level 2 1-foot sequence and a level 3 1-foot sequence. You know, you can see a twizzle error like we saw with Una Gage, for instance, where she falls out of the twizzle, or like we saw, unfortunately, with Bravi in Somerville, where somebody falls, right? But they don't see a lot of times the little subtle things with, for instance, Emily and Vadim's, where she got a level 2 and he got a level 3. And frankly, usually he's pretty strong on his twizzles. Emily, it's always kind of been an issue on and off. But I understand where the casual fan looks at that and go, I don't get it. Like, I thought that was amazing. Why aren't they higher? They've got to work on these level issues, their midline step, their 1-foot turns, continued work on Emilia's twizzles, which have gotten better for sure. But here, the way that I could calculate it is that they probably could have gone 117-ish, which their personal best is just right under that. What they got at 4 consonants, it was high 116s, maybe even 118, which is right around what Eugenia and Jeffrey got. So they're so close to contending. But like I said, almost. And everybody here, not everybody, but the majority of people that I feel like I saw this weekend are ready to crown this team number 3 U.S. team behind Christine and Anthony and Chalk and Bates. And hold up, because we have not yet seen Green and Parsons on the Grand Prix. I realize they were coming off a season. They did not do great. I completely expect them to rebound much better this season. Programs are better than what they had last season. So let's not jump the gun and immediately think that Emilia and Vadim are definitely going to be that 3rd place team. It's not set in stone. And I wouldn't give up on one of the other teams that didn't do so well here either. And number 6 was another American team, and that was the brother-sister duo of Una and Gage Brown. Their rhythm dance, they are skating to James Brown, same as we saw last week from Morozov and Chin. You love the full jump split that they do in the middle of their midline step. So fun. I believe Una said that was a suggestion from Romaine. Love it. First twizzles, really, really good. The second ones were just so much slower. They were another team that really got hammered down on levels. They lost almost 3 points once they reviewed a lot of their elements. In their free dance, they're skating to the Who, and Una had a mistake on her twizzle. She stumbled and fell out of that first set. She did manage to stay on their feet. I do like this program better than I liked their free skate last season. Again, I didn't dislike their free skate last season, but this one is just so much more energetic. I think it plays to their styles a little bit better than their All By Myself program did last season. I think that they obviously would have liked to have scored a little bit better in their free dance without the mistake that Una made in last season. They were the highest of the 3 teams that were here. I believe they were here with Peyton By and Zingas and Cesnik also. So a bit of a bummer, I'm sure, for them to be underneath Zingas and Cesnik and by the margin that they were. And hopefully in their next Grand Prix, they'll be able to skate a little bit cleaner. 7th place here was Hana Lim and Ye Kwan of Korea. Their rhythm dance, they're starting with Gloria Gaynor, and then they're doing a cover of I Will Survive. Why not the actual I Will Survive? Sometimes I feel like people do covers to try to be different, and sometimes it's just just use the original. I mean, it's fine. This program for me, the whole beginning section just feels like it's missing something. I feel like once they get into their midline step, their rhythm sequence, the lift, that they seem to be having so much more fun. It's like they're not thinking as much. So it just isn't, it's either not quite there yet or it's just not intelligently choreographed. I'm going to go with it's just not there yet right now. Their free dance is more successful. They're skating to music from the Cruella soundtrack. So including a piece of music called Call Me Cruella from Florence and the Machines. I had no idea that they had a song on the Cruella soundtrack. There's a few moments in here that I really love, that I really loved when they did them last year. So that's their straight line lift where she flips into it. I also love that lift that they do where she's in a full split. Of course, they were doing both of those last season. Need to see something different from them this season. I'm a little confused overall by this program. I get it. She's Cruella and she's great. She's got the silver streak. She's got the face, the costume, the whole bit. But what is he doing? Is he supposed to be the puppies? I don't get it. So I don't understand the thought process behind doing a Cruella program for a pair. I'm just scratching my head a little bit. Maybe I need a little bit more backstory as to what he's supposed to be doing, because he just kind of feels like he's there and he's better than that. In 8th place was Alicia Fabry and Paul Ayer of Canada, and they were going back to back, having just been at Skate America last week. They certainly did better in the rhythm dance last week, score-wise, than what they did here. But last week was a much easier field than it was here. It was much more competitive this week. So I know they would have loved to have been in the final group here like they were last week. But unfortunately, there was just a lot more stronger teams here. And their rhythm dance, their tech score also dropped almost a point. So they were another one that lost some levels. And in their free dance, I really like this program. I feel like Alicia, though, can bring another level of sass to this program. It's a man's world and you don't own me. Great music choices. There's just another level I feel like that this team has. In ninth place, disappointingly, was the third American team, and this was Emily Bravi and Ian Somerville. And this is the reigning bronze medalist from U.S. Nationals. Surprisingly so to a lot. Not as much for me because I could see this team last season really continuing to improve every single time they were out. And obviously they capitalized on some mistakes from Green and Parsons, from Zingas and Cesnik at last year's Nationals. They had the very unfortunate fall in the rhythm dance at last year's Worlds where they didn't make the free dance. It was hugely disappointing for them. And I know they really wanted to come back and rebound once they hit the Grand Prix. And unfortunately, that did not happen here in this competition. But let's talk about the rhythm dance first, which was more successful. They skate very close together, which we're going to talk about when we get to the free dance. But when it works, it works. So like in their midline step, it almost makes me nervous. It did. In how close they tend to skate together. I think in the rhythm dance, they really need to work on Emily's facial expressions. Like I don't like to just harp on Emily because I think she's a very good ice dancer. And like I mentioned when I saw them in their challenger in Budapest, where they were actually second there, that my eye is starting to go to her more. And so I could see the work that they're doing starting to pay off, even if I think that like the beginning of this rhythm dance isn't great for her. I think it would probably be better if he did more of the posing or they changed some of the choreography for her. Once they get into it, I think it's fine. They were actually one of the teams whose their tech score went up after review, which was good for them. Still, though, they found themselves in sixth place after the rhythm dance, behind their American teammates and behind the Tashlers. No, they would have loved to have been in that top five, even though it would have been a bit of a tall order, I think, for them. We get to the free dance. Still not convinced that it's a good idea for them to repeat this Niquit Pa free dance from last year. Loved it last year. I still like it this year. I'm still not sure if it was a good idea or not. That being said, they start off the program. Twizzles come very early on for them, and it's just a total disaster. Emily travels coming out of that first set of Twizzles and basically runs into Ian. She kicks him in the knee, and he goes down. He gets back up, tries to get into that second set of Twizzles, and he falls out of that as well. So both of them end up with very poor levels. He ends up with a base level on his. So this is different from what we saw last week with Alicia. Alicia fell very early in their first set of Twizzles last week at Skate America. So that she did not complete the minimum number that you need to do in order to get credit for that element. So she lost hers completely and they only got credit for his. Here, Ian actually fell after he completed the first set, got up in time to do the second set. So he didn't lose his, but between the base level that he got and Emily was very rattled after he fell, and she only ended up with a level 1 on hers. So altogether, they got 0.78 points on their Twizzles. And once you add the 1 point for the fall deduction, it was a negative element for them, meaning that they lost points. Take points away from their final score from this instead of adding points to it. So it cost them somewhere around 8 to 8.5 points. Very, very costly. I do think that they got back into it, but when you make a mistake that early, I don't feel like you ever really recover. And they ultimately ended up 8th in PCS, which is not where they would have been had they not had that mistake. And so ending up 9th here, they were incredibly disappointed. Emily would not look at Ian in the kiss and cry, which I couldn't determine if that was because she was ashamed or because she was mad at him, because she clearly ran into him and, they're a team out there, right? And so I don't want to say, oh, it was definitely her fault. He said all the right things after in the mix zone. He said that he tried to move out of the way and that he failed trying to move out of the way. But when I went back and watched it, and I went back and watched it like 4 times, she clearly kicks him in the knee. Like, when you skate that close together, that's one of the things that can go wrong, right? Like, you've got to stay in your lane almost, right? And if you get out of your lane, then you run into your partner. This happened last season with Lawrence Forney-Baudry and Nikolai Sorensen at Finlandia. Like, basically, he moved out of his twizzle, ran into her, and she fell. And so it sucks. They weren't going to be in the running for Grand Prix final or anything like that anyway. Obviously, they don't want to end up behind the other two teams who are very similar score to them internationally, but they've still got a chance to kind of rebound from this. It will just come very, very quickly because they are headed to France to compete literally next weekend. All right, in 10th place here was Holly Harris and Jason Chan of Australia. In their rhythm dance, Jason really struggled on his second set of twizzles and fell out. So a lot of twizzle mistakes at this competition, but I do think that disco is a good fit for them. Really fun. They always, to me, have really great programs. In the free dance, they're skating to Claire de Lune and some other pieces of music, including a piece of music called I Love You. Fortunately, in this one, it was Holly who fell out of their second set of twizzles a bit and affected their score. It's really a gorgeous program. Like, that last stationary lift is so good. And I get that she made the error with her twizzles, but is this team really 10 points behind everyone else? Like, at every Grand Prix they're at, they're pretty much always 9th or 10th place. They have really good programs. I mean, outside of Four Continents last year when they scored some of the best scores of their career, it just always seems like they're just scraping the bottom of the barrel. And I don't get it. I feel like they're better than the scores that they get from the judges. All right, so that completes the ice dance event. So my Pam Chinko Award this week, I'm giving it to Lopareva and Brazeau for that free dance. It was just so interesting, so creative, and so fun. All right, looking ahead to France this weekend, we're already going to our third stop, so we're almost halfway through the Grand Prix. So we've got some teams that we have seen and a whole lot of teams we haven't seen yet. So we've got Marie-Jade Loriot and Romain Legac of Canada looking to rebound from their 7th place finish last weekend at Skate America. We've got the Mraz-Czechs from the Czech Republic who were also at Skate America. We've got 3 French teams. So Dupaget Nabai from France, who are always usually cool, not quirky as Lopareva and Brazeau, but they always have a little bit of quirk to them. Then we have Lopareva and Brazeau going back to back, and we have Legage and Kaffa, who have improved, continue to improve. I really enjoy this team. Guinard and Fabry will be here, and those are going to be our favorites, along with Reed and Ambrulevicius of Lithuania. Bravi and Somerville, as I mentioned, going back to back, and then Nisset and Markelov in their second Grand Prix, and Eva Pate and Logan Bai in their first Grand Prix this season. So definitely expect Guinard and Fabry here to win. This is a really good opportunity for Reed and Ambrulevicius. They are basically set up to go to Grand Prix final this year. Here in their second Grand Prix, I think, is NHK, so they'll go back to back. They're the most likely the second best team at both of their Grand Prix. And so that really paves the way for them. Now, it's not a done deal. Lopareva and Brazeau have not gotten the scores that we've seen from Allison and Salius, but it's not out of the question that they could leap over them and get second. Like, it could happen, but I don't expect it to. I expect it to be Guinard and Fabry, Reed and Ambrulevicius, and Lopareva and Brazeau on the podium here. And we'll see if Marie-Jade and Romain, as well as Emily and Ian, can bounce back from both of their disappointing finishes in their 2 previous Grand Prix. And we'll see how those 3 American teams shake out coming into this one. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Feel free to leave a line as to who you enjoyed watching Nice Dance this week. You can find me on all the socials at iSkate Podcast. And feel free to send me a line anytime at thecuttingedgepod@gmail.com.
Oh,